Dario Borning is moving out of his family's home in Cologne. He'll be studying law in Göttingen, and he's found a novel alternative to the cramped university dormitories. He'll be taking up residence in a retirement home, sharing facilities with 500 senior citizens. He and his sister have their differences when it comes to loading the moving van. Dario tells us he's always gotten along well with older people and thought this might be a good opportunity. He applied and luckily was accepted. It's not every 20-year-old who would want to move into a retirement home. Dario's stepfather is behind the wheel for the trip to Göttingen. That's when Dario realizes for the first time how far out of town he'll be living. The Deutschen Altenhilfe Retirement Center is a massive undertaking. It reserves a few apartments for university students to inject a bit of youthful energy and optimism into the center. Dario and his mother take a look around. His apartment is located in a section where the senior citizens are physically fit and largely self-sufficient. The rent is cheap, but Dario still has to put in 30 hours of work per month. Before the big move gets underway, curious senior citizens gather in the hallway outside. Dario introduces himself to his new neighbors. Dario tells one of them that if she ever needs anything, all she has to do is knock. He's available starting next week. His mom chimes in, saying it's always nice to have younger people around. The new neighbor agrees and wishes him all the best for his studies. Dario describes himself as a people person. He has fond memories of good times with his grandfather. Now he's hoping to make new friends. He says his new neighbors gathered round and struck up conversations. They were inquisitive, he says, which isn't true of all older people. 3 weeks later, it's time for Dario to help prepare the evening meal. Elsa complains she's not hungry. The caretaker, Linda, says it'll take time to get everything ready. Dario will be responsible for making sandwiches. Linda is a registered care worker who shows him the ropes. Linda advises him to stand facing the room so it's easier to make contact with people. She says that's very important. This section houses seniors who can no longer take care of themselves. They need help getting dressed, and meals are provided. Dario has 2 hours to prepare food for 30 residents. He says it's not that hard, but he's still having some difficulty. It's not like having a real job, he explains. It's more a matter of providing moral support. The first residents arrive for dinner at 6 o'clock. Dario's been out partying. He says he didn't get home until 7:30 this morning. Linda passes the word along to the elderly residents. But she says everything will be back to normal by tomorrow. She then asks the young man if he understood the message. He says he has. Some of the seniors can eat their evening meals in the cafeteria. For others, it's brought right to their beds. Linda introduces Dario to Helena Spaniel. Barrio, she says, that's not a name. But Linda is patient with those who are hard of hearing.
Hallo.
Ich heiße Helene Spaniel.
Ich heiße Dario Borning.
Wie war Ihr Name?
Dario Borning.
Ach ja, es ist schön.
Helena is in her 80s. She says it's nice to have people drop by because it can get really lonely sometimes. It's not easy, she says, to have interesting conversations with people here. But when young people are around, she feels like she can talk about interesting subjects like politics.
Dann habe ich ja wieder jemand, mit dem ich mich auch mal über Politik unterhalten kann.
Ja, das können wir gerne machen.
Ja, das ist sehr schön. Danke.
Nicht zu danken. Bis morgen früh. Ja. Ciao.
Dario has his own dinner after his shift is over. He's pleased with his first day of work.
Die sind sehr freundlich, sind alle sehr nett.
He says everyone is friendly and easy to get along with. The young student has joined a chess club, a good way to get to know the residents. Günther Bielefeld is interested in the young man's background. Dario says chess is more of a hobby, but he'd still like to improve his game. Dario plays a match against Heinz Grüne, an easy opponent. But he runs into some difficulties early on. Günther offers him some good advice. He says he shouldn't interject himself into the match, but he sees a good strategy for Heinz to employ. The player accepts the advice grudgingly. Günther Bielefeld knows what he's talking about. He's been head of this chess club for years, and he played his first matches as a prisoner of war using hand-carved pieces. Heinz is not convinced, but Bielefeld's strategy pays off on the board. Black takes the white rook, and it's all over. They'll meet again in a week's time. Dario says it's been a pleasure and a learning experience, and next time they'll team up against Bielefeld.
Ja, auf jeden Fall. Ja.
A few weeks later, Dario and his fellow students are prepping for their first major exam, criminal law. But the others have a slight advantage. They don't have to work on the side. And they have no interest in Dario's living arrangement, staying and working in a retirement home. This student says he can't imagine being with old people all the time, trying to understand their problems. He couldn't handle it. Another says it would simply be too much for him. After all, Dario complains he doesn't have enough free time. Back home, housework is waiting. Dario is thinking about the comments of his classmates. He concludes their opinions don't really matter. He's made his own decision, and he doesn't regret it. No matter how much university pressure Dario's under, he still has to show up for work. Linda helps one of the elderly residents drink her hot chocolate slowly so she doesn't choke on it. Slow and steady, she says a few times, till she gets the message across. Linda is still assisting Dario with his rounds. The next time, he'll be going it alone. That gives him pause for thought about what to do if the unthinkable happens. What if someone passes away?
Dann bringt man den noch ins Bett.
Dario knows the body must remain in bed. Linda explains that the corpse must be wheeled down to the morgue. It's located downstairs next to the garbage containers of all places. But she assures Dario that it doesn't happen very often.
Das heißt, da draußen.
Dario remembers when his own grandparents passed away. He recalls seeing them shortly before they died. But he's never actually seen a corpse, and he hopes he never does.
Das hat man mitbekommen halt dann, wie sie im Sterben lagen, aber einen Toten direkt.
Meanwhile, Dario is learning how to cook.
Habe ich eigentlich auch nicht vor.
His neighbor, Annalisa Kohler, is teaching him how to make German pancakes.
Langsam, langsam, ganz langsam. Ist ja nicht klumpt.
Annalisa thinks that's enough milk, but Dario wants to add some more. She tells him it depends whether he wants the batter to be sweet or sour. Dario thinks it's just right. And now for some eggs. She thinks 4 should be enough.
Ja, machen wir das.
Annalisa moved into the retirement home 4 years ago, after her husband died. After a few months here, Dario has concluded this is not the way he wants to spend his later years.
Zu Hause bleiben.
He says he thinks of his own grandfather as the perfect example. He stayed home where he felt most comfortable. The more Dario thinks about it, the more doubts he has about spending one's golden years in the confines of an institution like this. As for the pancakes, kind of bland, he says, but otherwise pretty good. A meal at the university ahead of the big exam. The past few weeks have been a pressure cooker of study and work. As the stress increases, Dario's initial enthusiasm has waned. Now he's thinking about returning to Cologne. Cologne means a lot to me, he says. I'd be happier there. But first he has to pass his exams. Dario has survived the first major test. But he won't be partying with the others. Duty calls. He thinks it went well. He studied hard and got through it. It's his first time alone with the retirees. He thinks, thank goodness for television. He rearranges a few things so the seniors can see better and tells them to call if they need help. One woman needs some assistance. Now she's more comfortable. Dario says he actually enjoys his job, but he's sick of always having to prepare sandwiches. It's not what you'd call a dream job, he says. He'd like to take a more active role in caring for the elderly, but he's reduced to preparing meals. Still, he says, things could be worse. Now Dario's thinking about quitting and moving out of the retirement home. He says it's not the kind of work he envisioned when he accepted this job.
Hat Ihnen alles geschmeckt?